When that bank notification hit my phone, my hands trembled. It wasn't a tremor of fear or even shock. It was the vibration of an engine, long dormant, finally turning over. My husband, Richard, had secretly given our entire 30-year joint savings, $800,000, to his brother. I didn't cry. I didn't throw a vase. I didn't even feel my heart rate climb. I simply stared at the negative balance, the digital proof of an ultimate betrayal. For 3 decades, I had poured my life into that account, my earnings as an interior designer dwarfing his commissions as a mid-level real estate agent. I had built our home, our portfolio, and our reputation. Richard had merely inhabited the life I'd constructed, wearing it like one of his tailored suits. I calmly picked up my phone, my thumb steady as I scrolled to my lawyer's name. "Sarah," I said, my voice even. "Eleanor, it's been a while. Everything all right?" "Initiate the plan," I said. There was a pause, not of confusion, but of acknowledgement. "Are you certain, Eleanor? Scorched earth is final." "I am watching the ashes settle as we speak," I replied, and hung up. Richard came home 3 hours later, whistling. That whistle, once a sound of domestic comfort, now sounded like a blade sharpening. He kissed my cheek, his lips smelling faintly of the expensive scotch he favored, the one I paid for. "Tough day, darling?" he asked, loosening his silk tie. "You could say that," I said, handing him a glass of water. He preferred sparkling, but I'd given him tap. He didn't notice. He never noticed the details. That was my domain. And that was his fatal mistake. Richard believed our life was a partnership. It wasn't. It was a corporation, and I was the CEO. He was the flashy head of sales, charming the clients, while I managed the assets, the strategy, and the infrastructure. And I had, years ago, recognized a significant liability: his family, specifically his brother Marcus. Marcus was a black hole in human form. Every few years, he'd appear with a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity: a failed restaurant, an alpaca farm, a crypto scheme based on seawater. And every time, Richard, blinded by some misplaced fraternal loyalty, would funnel him money. Small amounts at first. $5,000 here, $20,000 there. After the seawater crypto incident cost us $60,000 8 years ago, I drew a line. Richard swore it would never happen again. I smiled, nodded, and the next day I met Sarah. We called it the marital contingency protocol, but I privately nicknamed it Scorched Earth. It wasn't just a plan for divorce, it was a plan for dissolution. It was a complex series of legal and financial maneuvers designed to protect my assets while leveraging Richard's dependence on them. For 8 years, that plan had sat in a secure vault, a silent testament to my lack of faith. Richard believed our Greenwich home was in both our names. It wasn't. It was held by an irrevocable trust I had established in my name, a trust that leased the property back to us for $1 a year. Richard had signed the paperwork years ago, believing it was a savvy estate planning move to avoid taxes. He never read the fine print. Richard believed his thriving real estate business, Massey and Cole Properties, was his. It wasn't. I was the silent Cole. I had provided the seed capital, the office lease, and the line of credit he used to stage his properties. My capital was secured not just against the business, but against his personal guarantees. Richard believed our joint savings account was our safety net. He was right. It was his safety net. Mine was diversified across 3 other accounts he didn't know existed. The $800,000 he'd stolen wasn't just savings. It was his severance. It was the money I had mentally earmarked to give him, to let him walk away comfortably when the time came. allowing me to exit the marriage without the mess of a public fight. He had, in his infinite stupidity, stolen his own golden parachute. And now he was in free fall. He just didn't know it yet.
That first week was a performance worthy of an Oscar. I made his favorite meals. I listened intently as he complained about a difficult client or a slow market. He was jittery, checking his phone constantly. He was waiting for Marcus to call, waiting to hear that the $800,000 had magically turned into $8 million. He was waiting for the validation that would finally prove he was smarter than his wife. When you built a life with someone for 3 decades, you assume you know them. You assume you're safe. Maybe that's the biggest mistake any of us can make. You stop seeing the person in front of you and see only the memory of who they were. I had stopped making that mistake 8 years ago. Richard never had. On Friday, exactly 1 week after the notification, the first phase began. Sarah had already executed the acceleration clause. The moment the scorched earth protocol was activated, all debts Richard owed to my trust became immediately due. This included the entire line of credit for his business. He was at the golf course, the 14th hole to be precise, when his office manager called him, hysterical. The bank had frozen their operating account. Payroll was due. Their creditors were calling. He burst through the door at 4 p.m., his face a mottled red, his expensive golf shirt soaked in sweat. "Eleanor, something's wrong. The bank, they've frozen everything. They said our creditor called the loan." I looked up from my copy of Architectural Digest, feigning mild confusion. Our creditor. Darling, what creditor? We don't have business debts, just the mortgage. No, the business, Massey and Cole. They said E. Cole Trust demanded immediate repayment. I placed the magazine on the coffee table. I let the silence stretch, filling the high-ceilinged room until it was suffocating. "Oh," I said, my voice clear and cold. "That creditor?" The color drained from his face. "You? You're E. Cole?" "Eleanor Cole," I confirmed. "It was my mother's maiden name. I thought you knew." "But that's my business. I built that." "I funded it, Richard," I said, standing up. "I funded it, I secured it, and I protected it from your worst impulses. Or so I thought. Where is the money, Richard?" It was the first time I'd asked. His eyes darted around looking for an escape, a lie, anything. "It was an investment," he stammered. "A big one. Marcus found it. It's solid, Elle. Absolutely solid. Just a small liquidity problem." "How much, Richard?" "It's the savings, but it's coming back. Double," he said. "Maybe triple." "He stole $800,000, I stated. It wasn't a question. "He stole our retirement, our future, the money I earned scraping clients' egos for 30 years, and you let him." I was going to surprise you," he yelled, a pathetic defense. "When it paid off, I was going to give you everything you ever wanted." "I already have everything I ever wanted, Richard. I bought it myself. The only thing I didn't have was an honest partner, and now I don't have a partner at all." He gaped. "What are you talking about? Initiate the plan. What did you say to your lawyer?" Ah, I thought. He'd checked my call logs. Sloppy. But it didn't matter now. "I'm not talking about a divorce, Richard. I'm talking about a collections action. You defaulted. The business is now in receivership. As of 3 p.m. today, you are no longer the CEO of Massey and Cole. You are, in fact, an employee of the Equal Trust, and your employment is terminated, effective
Immediately. He sank onto the Italian leather sofa, my sofa. He looked for the first time in his life utterly small. Eleanor, no, you can't. It's my name, my reputation. This will ruin me. This, right here, is the moment. If you've ever had to meticulously plan your own survival while smiling at the person destroying you, you'll understand the kind of cold focus I'm talking about. It's not about anger. It's about precision. It will. I agreed. Your reputation in Greenwich is based on the perception of success. But you were never successful, Richard. You were just funded. And I have decided to pull that funding. But us, our marriage, I said, walking to the grand staircase, was the collateral, and you defaulted on the loan. I'll be staying at the city apartment tonight. Your lawyer will be hearing from Sarah on Monday. I suggest you find one. And Richard, he looked up, his eyes hollow. You'll need to be out of my house by the end of the month. The trust is terminating the lease.
He didn't speak. He just made a small, broken sound. I picked up my purse. I had a 7 p.m. reservation at a restaurant he'd always found too pretentious. I didn't look back. The $800,000 was gone. That was a fact. I had mourned its loss 8 years ago when I first made the plan. What he had stolen from me this week wasn't money. It was time. He had stolen the last 8 years of my life, forcing me to live a lie, to smile at a man I couldn't trust. Now, I was collecting the interest. And I was just getting started. He had lost his business. Next, he would lose his reputation. And I knew exactly how to take it from him. For the next 2 weeks, Richard was a ghost in his own life. He had moved into the guest room. Per the initial arrangement Sarah had negotiated with his stunned third-rate lawyer. He was forbidden from accessing any financial accounts, given a small, insulting stipend from the trust for necessities, as Sarah had put it, and was effectively trapped. He spent his days on the phone, a desperate, hushed urgency in his voice. He was calling Marcus. He was calling old clients. He was calling bank managers who suddenly wouldn't take his calls. His charm, his only real currency, had been devalued to nothing. The news of Massey and Cole being absorbed by a stern, faceless trust had ripped through the Greenwich real estate scene. The narrative I had carefully crafted and leaked via Sarah was one of fiscal irresponsibility and potential malfeasance. It was vague, damning, and utterly effective. Richard was no longer the charismatic rainmaker. He was a liability. But the business was just the scaffolding. The real structure of Richard's world was his social standing. In Greenwich, what you did was secondary to where you were seen. The charity galas, the golf club committee, the Sunday brunches at the club, that was Richard's kingdom. And I was the one who had paid the dues. The annual Greenwich Preservation Gala was in 3 weeks. It was the event of the fall. Richard had been on the hosting committee for a decade. It was, in his mind, the pinnacle of his social achievement. He lived for that moment. His name on the invitation, his speech at the podium, the deferential nods from people who mattered.
I, on the other hand, had always found it a crushing bore, a room full of peacocks preening for one another. But this year, I was suddenly very interested in attending. My first move was to find out what happened to the $800,000. It was gone. I knew that. But gone is a broad term. I hired a private investigator, a former forensic accountant named Patel, to trace the transfer. He didn't even try to hide it, Patel reported back 2 days later, his voice bored. Wire transfer. $800,000 from your joint account to an LLC registered in Delaware. Global Innovative Futures. From there, it was split. $200,000 went to an offshore account in the Caymans. The other $600,000 was withdrawn in cashier's checks over 3 days. Marcus, I said. Marcus Massey. Yes, the Cayman account is his. The checks, well, they were cashed. They're gone. Spent on, let's see. I heard him typing. A down payment on a Lamborghini Urus, 2 Rolex watches, one for him, one for a Ms. Anya Petrova, and the rest was likely at the tables. He was at the Borgata in Atlantic City for a week. He is not, shall we say, a skilled poker player. And the Global Innovative Futures? I asked. Shell Corporation, set up by Marcus Massey 3 months ago. It has no assets, no employees, no product. It was a shoebox to hold the cash until he could steal it. So there was no investment, I said. It wasn't a question. The only investment was in Mr. Massey's lifestyle, Miss Cole. He didn't just lose the money in a bad deal, he flat out stole it from his brother, who, it seems, stole it from you. Thank you, Mr. Patel. Send me the full report, every receipt. I hung up and looked at the evidence. The Lamborghini, the 22-year-old girlfriend, the casino receipts. He hadn't even had the decency to try and invest it. He'd just taken it and burned it. And Richard, my brilliant husband, had handed him the matches. This information was my weapon, but firing it at Richard would be a waste. He was already a dead man walking. I needed to aim it at the people whose opinions he valued more than his own. I called Cynthia Davies. Cynthia was the unelected queen of Greenwich society. She was the chairwoman of the gala, a woman whose entire identity was built on moral superiority and $1,000 luncheons. She and I were cordial. She found me too serious, and I found her appallingly shallow. But we respected each other's power. "Cynthia, darling," I said, pitching my voice to just the right frequency of shared distress. "I have a terrible problem, and I truly need your advice." That was the hook. Cynthia lived to give advice. We met at the club in a quiet alcove. "Eleanor, you look stressed. Is it Richard? We've all heard the dreadful news about his business. Such a shock." "Cynthia, that's just the tip of the iceberg," I said. I leaned in. "I am in a terrible, terrible bind. I'm afraid Richard has been compromised." I then spun a tale. I didn't lie, not exactly. I simply arranged the facts. I told her about a family emergency, about Richard's misguided loyalty to his brother. I painted a picture of a man taken advantage of, a vulnerable man. Cynthia loved to hear about vulnerable men who had been duped. He gave his brother money, Cynthia, a lot of money. Money that wasn't, well, it wasn't entirely his to give. He emptied our joint retirement fund. Cynthia's eyes widened. This was far juicier than a simple business failure. This was scandal. "No," she breathed. "And the worst part, oh God, this is the part I can't bear, is what Marcus did with it." I slid Patel's report across the table, just the highlights. The photo of Anya Petrova on a yacht, Patel nodded, that was rented for 24 hours, the receipt for the Lamborghini, the casino markers. Cynthia's face, usually locked in a mask of pleasant indifference, cycled through shock, disgust, and finally, righteous indignation. They stole it, she whispered, her eyes glued to the photo of the girlfriend. "Richard is devastated, of course," I lied, placing my hand on my heart. "He's ashamed. He's broken. He can't possibly be on the gala committee. Not now. He's trying to fix it, to get the money back. But Cynthia, it's gone." I let her sit with that. I had just handed her the social equivalent of a nuclear bomb. "That monster," she said, her voice like ice. She wasn't talking about Marcus. She was talking about the social stain. And Richard, to be so foolish. "I'm trying to handle this quietly," I said, playing my final card. "For the family's sake. Richard is, well, he's not himself. I'm managing all our affairs now. He's agreed. It's the only way." "Of course, darling," she said, patting my hand, her mind already racing. She was calculating, recalibrating. Richard was out. I, the long-suffering, dignified, wealthy wife, was in. "Eleanor," she said, her tone shifting to one of conspiracy, "you must come to the gala. You must. You have to show them that you are fine, that the Cole family," she pointedly did not say Massey, "is stable. We'll simply remove Richard's name from the committee list, citing, of course, personal health issues. You are a true friend, Cynthia." The kill was clean. By dinner time, every committee member, every major donor, and every gossip columnist in a 2-state radius knew that Richard Massey was not only a business failure, but a social pariah, a fool who had been swindled by his own flesh and blood. He wasn't dangerous. He was, far worse, an embarrassment. Richard found out when he received a curt, unsigned email from the society informing him that his services on the committee were no longer required. He confronted me in the kitchen, waving his phone, his face pale. "You did this. You told them." "I told who what, Richard?" I asked, calmly chopping carrots for a soup I would eat alone. "Cynthia Davies, the gala. They kicked me off the committee after 10 years. "That is a pity," I said, not looking up. "Perhaps they're tightening their belts. I hear fiscal responsibility is very in this season." "Don't play dumb with me, Eleanor. This is my life you're ruining." "No, Richard," I said, finally turning to face him. The knife was still in my hand. "Your life was the $800,000. Your life was the 30 years of my work, my focus, and my trust. You burned it. You and Marcus. This is just the consequence. You are no longer a person of standing in this town. You are a cautionary tale." He looked at the knife. He looked at my face. And for the first time, I think he truly saw me. He saw the woman who had been planning this for 8 years. He saw the woman who had just surgically removed his entire social circle without breaking a sweat. He backed away. "You're a monster." "No, Richard," I said, returning to my carrots. "I'm just a very good accountant, and you are a bad debt. I am simply writing you off." He spent the rest of the week in his room. The house was silent. The phones had stopped ringing. His friends had abandoned him. His business was gone. His name was mud. He had nothing left. Nothing except the house he was living in. And the lease was up in 7 days. The gala was tomorrow night. I had a new dress, black, severe, and devastatingly expensive. I was going to go, hold my head high, and accept the sympathetic nods of a town that had cast out my husband. Watching someone realize their world is collapsing is a strange feeling. It's a moment so intense, it burns itself into your memory forever. I knew the final collapse was coming. He thought he had hit bottom. He had no idea I was about to hand him a shovel.
Cynthia and I parted ways, 2 generals who had just formed a convenient, temporary alliance. She would handle the social execution. I would provide the ammunition. I returned to an oppressively silent home. Richard was upstairs. I could hear the faint murmur of his voice, pleading, angry. He was on the phone with Marcus. I stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, listening. "Don't understand, Mark. It's all frozen,"
Her name. She was the money. All of it. A pause. Marcus was likely spinning another web. What do you mean, lie low? Richard's voice cracked. I'm ruined. The business is gone. I'm about to be kicked out of the club. We need that money back. The profits, Mark. Where are the profits you promised? Silence again. Longer this time. What do you mean, a temporary setback? Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Marcus, what tables? Marcus, did you gamble it? Marcus, I heard a crash. He must have thrown his phone. A door slammed. The house was quiet again. He knew. He knew the $800,000 wasn't invested. He knew it was gone. And he knew his brother, the one person for whom he had incinerated his entire life, was the one holding the matchbook. A lesser woman might have felt pity. I felt a clinical detachment. This was a disease, his pathological weakness, and I was simply observing the symptoms. When you've been betrayed at such a fundamental level, the part of you that feels empathy for the betrayer simply dies. It gets cauterized, burned away to stop the bleeding. My private investigator, Patel, had provided me with more than just receipts. He had provided leverage. Marcus hadn't just stolen from me. He'd left a trail of smaller financial brushfires all over the tri-state area. He had investors in a fake tech startup in Stamford. He owed a significant amount of money to a private lender in New Jersey who was not affiliated with any bank. My next step was not to destroy Richard, but to insulate myself and ensure the finality of Marcus's ruin. I had Sarah, my lawyer, package Patel's entire file. Send it to the private lender in New Jersey, anonymously, of course, a concerned citizen. Eleanor, Sarah said, a note of impressed caution. These are not people you want to involve in a marital dispute. I'm not involving them. I'm directing them. Marcus took the bait. They can deal with the consequences. I just want him occupied. I want him unable to answer Richard's calls. Within 48 hours, Marcus Massey's phone was disconnected. His apartment in the city was empty. Miss Anya Petrova had posted a tearful Instagram story from a lounge at JFK, flying one way to Dubai. Marcus was running. Richard was now truly, completely alone. This was the state he was in when the email from the gala committee arrived. He had no brother to call, no business to hide in, no friends to complain to. He had only me, his executioner, gliding through the house in cashmere lounge sets, finalizing menus with a caterer for a small dinner party I was planning. He confronted me in the kitchen, waving his phone. His face was a mask of gray-green panic. You did this. You told them. I told who what, Richard? I asked, calmly chopping carrots for a soup I would eat alone. The rhythmic thwack of the ceramic knife on the marble block was the only sound. Cynthia Davies, the gala. They kicked me off the committee after 10 years. That is a pity, I said, not looking up. Perhaps they're tightening their belts. I hear fiscal responsibility is very in this season. Would you like some soup? It's carrot ginger. Stop it, he screamed, slamming his fist on the counter. The carrots jumped. I did not. Stop acting like this, like you're enjoying this. I stopped chopping. I placed the knife down, very deliberately. I turned, leaning back against the counter, and crossed my arms. Enjoying it? No, Richard. Enjoyment is what I felt when we closed on this house. Enjoyment was our trip to Tuscany, the one I paid for, where you swore you'd love me forever. This is not enjoyment. This is pest control. His face crumpled. Eleanor, please, I'll I'll fix it. I'll get the money. I'll work. I'll do anything. Fix it. You mean you'll beg your brother, the one who is currently hiding from a loan shark in New Jersey, to return the money he spent on a 22-year-old and a Lamborghini. You'll work? At what? Your business is mine. Your name is toxic. You have no skills, Richard. You have charm, and it's worn off. This is the part of betrayal that stories often miss. It's not just the grand act. It's the crushing realization of the stupidity of it all, the sheer idiotic waste. People in their 50s, our age, are supposed to be wise. They're supposed to be building a legacy, not setting fire to it for a brother who wouldn't spit on them if they were on fire. "This is my life you're ruining," he whispered, tears now streaming down his face. "No, Richard," I said, my voice dropping to match his. "Your life was the $800,000. Your life was the 30 years of my work, my focus, and my trust. You burned it, you and Marcus. This is just the consequence. You are no longer a person of standing in this town. You are a cautionary tale. You are the man people will point to at the club and whisper about. That's Richard Massey. Lost it all. His wife? Oh, she's fine. She's at Cynthia Davies' table." He looked at the knife, still gleaming on the counter. He looked at my face, composed and calm. And for the first time, I think he truly saw me. He saw the woman who had been planning this for 8 years. He saw the woman who had just surgically removed his entire social circle, his family, and his future, all without breaking a sweat. He backed away. "You're a monster." "No, Richard," I said, returning to my carrots. "I'm just a very good accountant, and you are a bad debt. I am simply writing you off." The house was silent. The phones had stopped ringing. His friends had abandoned him. His business is gone. His name is mud. He has nothing left. Nothing except the roof over his head. And the lease was up in 7 days. The gala was tomorrow night. I had a new dress, black, severe, and devastatingly expensive. A widow's dress, I thought with a grim smile. I was going to go, hold my head high, and accept the sympathetic nods of a town that had cast out my husband. Watching someone realize their world is collapsing is a strange feeling. It's a moment so intense, it burns itself into your memory forever. I knew the final collapse was coming. He thought he'd hit bottom. He had no idea I was about to hand him a shovel. The house was next. The night of the Greenwich Preservation Gala arrived on a wave of crisp October air. The house was tomb silent. Richard hadn't left the guest room in 2 days. I wasn't sure he was even eating. Frankly, I didn't care. I dressed meticulously. The black dress was a masterpiece of understated power. My jewelry was minimal. The diamond earrings and necklace I had bought myself in Milan, not the gaudy anniversary bracelet Richard had purchased, on our joint card, of course, 5 years prior. As I clasped the necklace, I looked at my reflection. My eyes, at 45, were clear. I looked, I realized, exactly like myself. The veneer of the charming Mrs. Massey had cracked and fallen away, revealing the Eleanor Cole underneath. It was a face of steel. I walked down the grand staircase. I didn't bother to knock on his door. I simply left. The gala was a sea of shimmering gowns and strained smiles. The air was thick with perfume and the scent of judgment. As I walked in, a hush fell. Then the whispers. And then the procession. One by one, the wives of Greenwich, the women I had served on committees with, the women whose homes I had redesigned. approached me. Their faces were masks of practiced sympathy. "Eleanor, darling, we've been so worried. How are you holding up?" Such a brave face. Each of them knew. Cynthia had done her work well. I was no longer just Eleanor. I was Saint Eleanor, the dignified victim, the woman who had borne the ultimate betrayal with grace. Richard wasn't even an afterthought. He was a footnote, a stain they were all eager to wipe from the town's pristine carpet. Cynthia herself greeted me at the grand entrance, kissing the air on both sides of my face. "You look magnificent, Eleanor, truly. Strength becomes you." "Thank you for having me, Cynthia," I said. "Your table is waiting. We put you right at the front. We want everyone to see you're with us." I was seated between a banking executive and the mayor. All night they leaned in, offering me wine, offering me support, offering me connections. They saw power. They saw the E. Cole Trust. They saw a woman who had overnight become one of the most eligible and powerful bachelorettes in Connecticut. My social stock, tied as it was to my own name and my own wealth, had skyrocketed. His, tied as it was to me, had evaporated. About halfway through the dessert course, as a senator was droning on about tax incentives, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Sarah, my lawyer. One word: done. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. I took a sip of my champagne. It tasted like victory. Done meant the final step was in motion. Done meant the marshals had posted the notice. I arrived home just after midnight. The house was dark, but as I entered the foyer, a light clicked on in the gallery above. Richard was standing there, silhouetted against the moonlight. He looked like a scarecrow, his expensive suit hanging off his frame. He was holding a single piece of paper in his hand. "They came," he whispered. His voice was raw. "While you were at the party, they came." "Who came, Richard?" I asked, setting my clutch on the marble table. "The marshals. With this." He held up the paper. It was a notice of eviction. "What is this, Eleanor? This is a joke, right? A tactic? You're scaring me. You've made your point. You've ruined my business. You've turned my friends against me. You've humiliated me. Isn't that enough?" I unzipped my dress, letting it pool at my feet, and stood there in my simple black slip. I was tired, not physically, but spiritually. I was tired of his voice, his weakness, his very presence. "It's not a tactic, Richard. It's a formality. The lease on this house, the lease I granted you and me from my trust, is terminated. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. After that, your belongings will be removed and placed in storage. The locks will be changed." He stumbled down the stairs, his eyes wide and unbelieving. "Our home? Eleanor, we built this house. We lived here for 20 years. "No," I said, my voice cutting through his panic. "I built this house with money I earned. You simply lived in it. And we didn't do anything. I did. You spent, you lied, and then you stole." He grabbed my arm. It was the first time he had ever laid a hand on me in anger. My reaction was not to flinch. My reaction was ice. I looked down at his hand on my bare arm, then up to his eyes. "Get your hand off me, Richard. Now." He let go, as if he'd been burned. "Please," he begged. It was a pathetic sound. "Elle, please. I have nowhere to go. My brother, he's gone. My accounts are frozen. I have nothing. Don't do this. After 30 years, don't I deserve some mercy?" I walked past him to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I drank it slowly. I thought about his question. 30 years. Mercy. Did I owe him mercy? Did I owe mercy to the man who had looked me in the eye day after day for 8 years, all while knowing I was his backup plan? The man who, given the first opportunity, had taken the entirety of our shared future and handed it to a con artist to be burned on cars and women? The $800,000 wasn't just money. It was 30 years of skipped vacations so I could build my business. It was the inheritance from my mother, the one who told me to always have your own account. It was the down payment on the future I thought we'd have, one where we could finally relax. He had not just stolen from me. He had stolen from my mother's memory. He had stolen from the younger version of myself who had worked 80-hour weeks. Mercy? No. What he deserved was an accounting, a balancing of the books. The $800,000 was your mercy, Richard, I said, placing the glass in the sink. That was the money I had set aside for you. It was your thank you for the good years package. It was your soft landing. You stole your own severance package. You stole it and you gave it to Marcus. So no, you don't get mercy. You get precisely what you have earned. What am I supposed to do? He cried. I don't know, Richard. And for the first time in 30 years, I truly do not care. You could call your friends. Oh, wait, you don't have any. You could call your brother. Oh, right, he's disappeared. You could get a job, but you have no skills. I started walking toward my bedroom. You planned this, he suddenly yelled at my back. The house, the business, eco-trust. You've been planning this for years. You're just waiting for me to fail. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I turned, one hand on the polished mahogany banister. You're wrong, I said. I wasn't waiting for you to fail, Richard. I was preparing for it. There's a difference. I gave you every chance to be a better man. I gave you 30 years, and you chose, at every turn, to be you. You're a cold, heartless woman, he spat. Yes, I said. You made me one. You took the woman who loved you and forged her into this, so you have no one to blame but yourself. Good night, Richard. I'd start packing if I were you. The movers I hired will be here at 9 a.m. tomorrow. They are very efficient. I went to my room and locked the door. I slept, for the first time in 3 decades, the deep, dreamless sleep of a woman with no liabilities. The next morning, I was woken by the sound of trucks. I looked out my window. 2 large moving vans were in my driveway. Richard was on the lawn, arguing with a man in a blue jumpsuit. I took a shower. I dressed in jeans and a simple white shirt. When I came downstairs, the house was a hive of activity. Men were carefully, professionally, emptying the guest rooms and Richard's study. Richard was sitting on the front steps, his head in his hands. He was a stranger in his own home, or rather, in my home. I walked out, carrying a small travel bag. Where are they taking my things? He asked, his voice dead. To a storage unit in Stamford. The first month is prepaid. After that, it's your responsibility. I walked to my car, the sleek, black Tesla I'd bought myself last year. Eleanor, wait. I turned. Is this it? He asked. 30 years? It just ends? Like this? On a driveway? I looked at him. The charismatic, handsome man I had married was gone. In his place was a shell, a hollowed-out, desperate man who had gambled on the wrong thing. He had gambled on my weakness, on my love, on my forgiveness. He had mistaken my patience for stupidity. This, right here, was the moment of release. This was the feeling I had been waiting for. It wasn't joy. It wasn't happiness. It was satisfaction. The simple, clean, profound satisfaction of a long, complicated equation finally being solved. The books were balanced. Every decimal point was accounted for. Some say revenge is a dish best served cold. They're wrong. Revenge isn't a dish, it's a feast. It's a feast you prepare for decades. You source the ingredients. You sharpen the knives. You set the table. And when you finally sit down to eat, every single bite is delicious. I got in my car. I didn't look back. I had a 10 a.m. meeting with an architect about my new project, a beautiful, minimalist beach house in the Hamptons, just for me.